Here's your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, the franchise guide.
So going back to this idea of fear, is that this is something that we make up in our heads and say, okay, I'm fearful of this. So in the case of owning a business, the fear is natural. Yes, there's a risk involved and I can lose my business and I can lose my investment. And naturally, as humans, we're wired to think of the worst, right? It's this idea of being in protection way back when as humans evolved, and always trying to protect and go to safety. And people will prioritize safety over the flip side and prosperity. So they're like, you know what? The pain is too much there of the loss. It outweighs the gain or the success. So I'm not going to move forward with that business or any business. I'm going to keep my safe job. And what I tell people is, again, in a rested state, when your mind is clear and you're kind of away from distraction, is really taking a step back and jotting things down, getting things out of your head to figure out what the true fear is. This individual I work with, and this is the exact same process that I used in figuring out if I wanted to own a business, was jotting things down like, okay, what is the worst case scenario in a business? Well, the investment was 100,000. I can lose that. I can go out of business and may have to go back and find a job afterwards if I had failed. But then that coach said to me, well, what about if you don't fail? What about if you succeed? The why and why you're doing this was to spend time with your family. At that current job, you're not going to have any time to spend with the kids and your future families. What happens if you succeed? You're home every day and not miss any events. Okay. Maybe you're not making millions of dollars, but you're making the same, if not better, money with some huge tax benefits. As the business increases, you can get into other businesses, maybe even scale back the hours even more because now you have a general manager in place. Now you start to build the time freedom, the financial freedom, the freedom of purpose, doing something that can help other individuals. Maybe that's helping someone, hiring them and donating. We started donating more. Maybe you want to start your own charity. Dan Sullivan talks about the freedom of working with people you enjoy working with, not being stuck at a job and working with 20 different managers. Physical freedom, physical location, getting to work from home and avoiding a 5-hour times 25-hour commute, whereas now you're walking 10 feet to the next bedroom because you're working from home. What is the best case scenario? When they outlined it like that, I said, okay, great. These are my options. I personally had so much pain. I had a lot of fear, let's be honest, but I also had a lot of pain and said, you know what? I hated my job. I disliked my job. I shouldn't say hate. I disliked my job and hated, I will say hated on the commute. The pain was there. And the idea of not seeing my kids grow up, my father, we owned a restaurant. We hardly saw him. We actually saw him as we got older more and more because we ended up working at our restaurant. So those are the things we looked at. We looked at different scenarios. We wrote them down because once they're in your head, they start to kind of spiral out of control. Now it's fear is turning into more confusion. Fear has its positive effects, right? It wants to keep you safe. It wants to make sure you're doing your homework, but you got to do the homework, not just say worst case. What about best case? What about if you're average? In a franchise, you have the franchisor built the system. They took on a lot of the risk. And obviously there was tons of fear there, but they took on the risk. They figured out the brand, the model, the best way to market, who the ideal franchise avatar is, what skill set do they need? They've done all that for you. And I'm not saying there's no risk involved with the franchise, but they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you. You pay the one-time franchise fee. You have access to the entire system day one, and franchise companies will talk all the time. Corporate location, it took us 10 years to hit $1 million in revenue. And our job is to get you to hit those revenue numbers in a fraction of the time. Maybe it's a couple of years, maybe it's a year, because we took our time figuring out the best ways of going about business, where to get customers, more importantly, how to keep those customers on, and they're figuring all that out. So when you're running these exercises and looking at businesses, look at the worst case and the best case.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn how to make the transition from corporate to owning your franchise, join Giuseppe on the next episode. You can also follow on all social media platforms and achieve financial and time freedom today.